they're going to make this game happen. So super exciting stuff happening. And these students were both our students in research methods, obviously, and other things. So part of the research was also, how do you make sure that your project is viable, right? How do you actually pay for this? Can you actually make it come to life in a way that you can manage? How do you get people to invest, right? To believe in you and actually give you the money to make these things come to life. And usually in the past, my artistic practice has been very sort of spontaneous. I'm not going to plan anything. And so I really kind of leaned into that because it was the pandemic, and why not? And you might not think, well, that's not research. But in a studio practice, the research is actually what you're doing in the studio. So when you're making stuff, that is research. So that when I talk about studio-based research and how research can be the act of doing and actually making it, sometimes you don't know what you're researching until you just start, right? Sometimes the materials guide you. Sometimes there's a question that you're trying to answer, and that's your starting point. But you don't know until you start getting your hands into materials. This is some more recent work. The working title is I Made a Hat. This is me when I was 5. And this is me when I was not 5 years old anymore. And when I was 5, I was in a hat parade. And I got to decorate this hat, and I was super jazzed about it, so excited that I actually drew a picture of myself and labeled that picture, I made a hat. But I didn't really remember much about it, right? I had this archive, this real thing that I made as a 5-year-old. I had evidence, but there was no memory really of it. It's like, well, how can I access that memory? You could use studio research to do that. Haha. So this is where the reenactment stuff starts to come in. So I thought, okay, I can make myself the clothing to try to get back into that space. And I can go to the spot, because that's the exact same spot. And I could run past. And what you see here, I know it's hard to see on the slide, but that is the drawing that I made of my hat when I was little. And I thought, what if I run down the street with my hat? Can I spark this memory? Like, what was I feeling at this moment? Because I was clearly jazzed about what was going on. Can I get myself back to this kind of headspace? Can I access that freedom and excitement that I felt when I was little by rebuilding the whole scenario through the clothing, through the setting? And this is an ongoing project, just as a little plug for the BCA program. I've received some funding from the university that's allowing me to hire some of my current students who in a couple of weeks are going to help me shoot the next iteration of this project, where we're going to shoot some still photography and some additional video, because now there's even more garments and there's even more stuff that's going to play into this, right? So the project is continuing to grow because the research is continuing to happen. This is also really cool, and we're super excited about this one. And maybe we'll end with this. Like, I know we're probably going over time because we are big research nerds and we could talk about this forever. So we're super excited about this assignment where we're going to have our students design a speculative meal. And so you're going to think about something related to your interests or your identity, like who you are. And then you're going to design a meal that somehow encapsulates that identity.
I don't know if you can see, but this is the meal from the movie Aliens. So, right, if you're interested, lots of students research sci-fi. So, you know, it's really, there's a lot there, okay? There's the platform, the East, there's the cook, the thief, the wife, and the lover. There's so many films that deal with food. So if you're into food, but then if you, maybe, you know, you're playing Sims and you eat a meal in Sims. So it's like, there's all kinds of possibilities there.
We've had some questions coming through already. Any advice to someone who's trying to get a game company off the ground? I have a team and we're skilled coders, but not much business experience.
I can answer that, or
I was going to say sign up for a program, but
yeah, sign up. No, actually, we just had a thing about that yesterday with Barista Apocalypse. Okay, so I mean, in that case, I often like just bring people together. So I had a student who did have their own, who was working, I think, for Ubisoft or something, and was one of my online students, and was making their own studio. And so I connected them. So I would just say that, like, well, me personally, I'm not, you know, in the gaming industry per se. I'm like really into connecting people.
it's partly, so like the student that I was talking about who's in the process of creating the game that is all about like Asian diasporic food. Same thing. She's in a situation where she has a studio, she has a team, they've just incorporated, which you have to do in order to get CMF funding. They're ready to go. But what she is gaining in the process of being in this program and in this course is the why. Like, why is your game important? Why is your game timely? What is it going to do within the gaming landscape, right? Like, who's your audience? Who are you trying to reach? Who are you building community with? So the piece that I try to address is sort of like raison d'etre. Like, what are you really interested in? What are you all about? And when you can articulate those things, you will set yourself apart from other people within the industry, right? Like, you are the value that you're bringing to this whole process.
If you are taking it in person, obviously you're going to meet your classmates. If you're taking it online, it's our responsibility as professors to connect students with each other, even if it's online.
And we do have a question about graphic design. And I know we did have 2 students who didn't know each other, met online, and then they produced a book. So they were interested in mental health, and they then wanted to publish a book together. And so we've got someone who said, what kind of research do graphic designers tend to undertake?
I have one too. This is just back and forth. I've had a graphic design student whose research project was all about the emotional impact of fonts. And so what she was interested in doing was designing a study to see the emotional impact of the same text, but when presented in a whole bunch of different fonts. And she was also a native Spanish speaker, so she was also interested in the impact on language, right? So the interactions between font, the language, and then the reaction in the person viewing it and reading it.
We had to, due to time constraints, I had a student that I was going to show on the slideshow, but who already worked for RBC and was a graphic designer. And so that student was really interested because RBC is it's over 100 years old. And so that student was interested in the graphic representation of RBC over 100 years. And so that's what that student researched in my class. And it was a really cool project as a graphic designer because it involved actually going and visiting archives, okay? Because your research, it's not online. It's just a lot of stuff is, but that particular wasn't. So that's one thing that one of my students researched as a graphic designer. Another one was the student, I'm not sure if we showed it today, but it was in the slideshow around, is a working graphic designer at present and is researching toxicity in the workplace and this sort of clash between corporate culture and the creative side, which of course are graphic designers, right? Even though they have jobs, they're still creative people and they're working in a corporate environment. And so she was researching that, and that was like super fascinating in terms of where that got her. She read so much about like this type of a working environment as a graphic designer. So those are some good examples.
Right. So would you say as well that the research, I guess the research methods and the research skills, they can be tailored to whatever artistic discipline is coming up?
Absolutely.
Sorry,
In a word.
we're sharing a mic. Yes, for sure. So the idea is, I mean, we've just revisited the class, but the idea is like students become aware. And even if you become aware of something that's not for you, that's useful. Because you say, yeah, okay, I identify that's not for me, I'm doing something else. And so it's giving students like a sort of language to talk about what they already do. That's what research methods are.
Brilliant, thank you. We have questions from in the room. Hi.
Yeah, so I don't have like a specific discipline that I'm in already. Like I went to school for acting and now I'm working and acting and like, you know, just doing a lot of different things and like I have an idea here and I have an idea there and I do a little bit of research here and there, but it never comes together because I feel like I hit a wall that I don't get past. And so like watching your presentation was really inspiring because like I could see myself doing things like that. But the thing is like I don't have a specific goal, but I do have sort of a specific idea, which is a lot harder to put together. Is this like the type, I feel like this is the type of program I should be in, but I don't know. Like I'm really like, I'm like, oh, I'm scared because I don't have an idea of like what I want from this, but I am interested to learn how to do that.
That's an amazing place to start.
Okay.
Yes. And the fantastic thing about creative research, and I can speak just from my experience in terms of studio-based practice, is that you should not have an answer before you start. Because if you have an answer before you start, then why are you doing research?
Right.
You already know. And so if you have some questions, you have that starting like feeling, you're good to go. Right. And then there are systems and structures that you can follow that will show you, there's skill development that goes along with it. But it's all in service of finding answers to the questions. I will tell you, inevitably, what happens is more questions.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the beautiful thing about being a creative person and doing research is you start to scratch that itch and you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much more that I need to know. And it just branches into all these amazing, beautiful projects. So it's okay to not know. That's actually a sweet spot. It's a really good place to be.
Yeah, we don't hold people to it either. It's like, it is a journey, right? So you might have some questions, you might kind of know, and through discussion, you can narrow it down. You can say yes to this, but no to that. No, I'm more interested in this direction. And, there's so many people who come in that way. And then you either get focused or not, because like, that's the whole point is, even if you don't commit to what you say do in research methods class, nobody's going to hold that to you. You're not going to say like, did you end up doing that for your final project? No, bad you. No, nobody does that. Okay. So it's it's a process, and through that process you learn.
Thank you very much. And I guess I've got a question that pivots off that as well, because it's something that I think you've mentioned a couple of times now, feeling. Because I think a lot of people think of research as something that's really academic and really heady, but how would you say, for creatives especially, the feelings come in, the impulses, the passions that people have, how does it help them, not just if they're doing a research methods class, but also if they're, venturing into the industry with artistic ventures, artistic projects, industry endeavors? Sorry, big question. If you,
This is an amazing question. And I don't want to just talk about myself. So if you could indulge me to show you some stuff that was literally just made right before this session, because today was the last day of class. And this is a class that I've taught that's called Creativity and Innovation. And the way I try to end the class is with creative manifestos. And they're very values driven and emotionally driven. And so the premise is, so you're almost done this program. You've learned a lot about yourself as a creative, but you don't know that much about industry yet. You don't know what it's going to be like. You have your hopes and your dreams for what it's going to be like, but you don't really know. What you can know is yourself. So we spend a little bit of time talking about our values as creatives and then turn them into manifestos. And because I love studio work, I always bring in craft supplies and we get a little silly, but it's all in service of really good stuff. So some of my students gave me permission to keep their stuff, which I love. So I'll show just a couple of them. This one, the manifesto statement was, my mistakes are not my shame. They're the scaffolding of who I am. And then this lovely, very sweet and silly craft-based representation of big Band-Aids that like every single thing you learn, even if it feels like a mistake or a failure, it's still learning, right? And it's nothing to be ashamed of. That's an opportunity for growth and learning who you really are. Another student just made this little brain cloud that says shh, because he's an overthinker. And so for his manifesto, he just needed to remind himself to calm down, right? That you don't have to overthink everything. And he's an actor and a working actor. And so for him, a quiet mind can also help in terms of getting into character and getting ready for performance. And then this one cracked me right up. So this student is actually also a high performing athlete. He's a gymnast who competes at the national and international level. So he's very focused, very driven, kind of literal person. And I've taught him several times. And even though like he uses his body a lot, he's also very in his head. And he loves all the crafty stuff, but he fights a little bit. And today he really just leaned into it. And he's like, okay, here it is. I'm going to try to do this. You just got to like play it cool on the outside and know that like you've got a plan. There's little blueprints inside these sunglasses. You've got a plan, right? So just keep looking at your plan. Nobody else needs to see it, just you, right? So just on the outside, fake it till you make it. But on the inside, just trust that you made a plan and you're working on it, right? And it's a process. So for me, like, I use my body a lot in my research. I use my emotional state a lot in my research. But I also read a ton and I love writing. But this idea of separating our brains from our bodies and from our emotions makes no sense to me, right? Like, it all has to be incorporated in what we do. We're creatives, right? We communicate in a variety of languages, and emotions are a huge part of that. Did that cover it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
What she said.
Just play it cool, man.
I can talk about feelings just like basically like for me, the feelings are an accessibility issue.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a way of experiencing the world that we call phenomenological, which is beyond just the visual sense. And so feelings are just such an important way to, you come with feelings, but then can you describe those feelings? Can you talk about those feelings? Can you make those feelings be understandable to somebody else? And is it all visual heavy, yes or no, right? And so you start getting into these things of accessibility, and yeah, feeling is part of that.
We do have a couple of questions about the Bachelor of Creative Arts itself. So I can talk a little bit to this. As I said, my name's Ian. I'm a pathway advisor for the Bachelor of Creative Arts. If you have enjoyed this and found this interesting, then this is just part of a whole program, which is designed for creatives, for creators, for those who want to, enter into leadership positions in the industry, to learn. We often frame it that the diploma is where you learn to excel at your art form and to really hone your craft. This is where you learn the more industry side of things. So how do I get my projects made? How do I pitch them, as was mentioned? I might actually ask a bit more of that. How do we pitch them? How do we retain creative control? And that is becoming very important in the creative arts at the moment. Those human skills, leadership skills as well, is something that a lot of folks are now looking for, regardless of what discipline you're in. And we've also seen a lot of people, I speak to students on the BCA who are starting their own business ventures, or they're getting themselves out there. We've had actors, I think Rami, who was played at the start in a video, he was working on a Netflix show. He was in 9 episodes of Bet on Netflix, which was just released. And he was working on his BCA and his trailer, doing it online. For myself as well, coming from a creative background, I've often seen this as taking some autonomy back from an industry in which we often feel we don't have any, because, it's very much like, I'm a creative, pick me. Now it's, I know the business side of things as well. Let's collaborate. How can we do that? I don't know if you'd agree with that sentiment, or you have anything to add to that.
Well, I would just add, honestly, that sometimes, and this is like by no means a criticism, but creative people want to do what they do, right? They want to do their creative outlet. And so sometimes, like, our role as professors is to, hone that in a bit, like focus it so that you can move to the next stage, so that you can make your ideas understandable to somebody who's a business person, right? Some of that is, and that's maybe not the funnest part, but that's also part of my job as well, is like, can you express what you're doing if you're an actor, let's say, on paper, so you can get that grant money to put your play together, right? So it's also that part of that as well.
I would just also throw in navigating systems, right? That we spend a decent amount of time understanding the sort of arts and culture landscape in Canada, and some of the satellite cultures that a lot of our students come from, including the United States, and understanding what your options are and how you can navigate those systems to meet your needs as a creative, right? Are you somebody who's going to be seeking public funding? And if so, what are the specific skills you need, and who do you go to? How do you assess which grant is the right one for you and the timing of it, so that you up your chances of getting that financial support? What I always say to the students in the politics class is, whether or not you're paying attention to the politics is paying attention to you, right? And the system is paying attention to you. So you might as well figure it out so that you know where you're going.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And I am going to just whip through some of the other questions in the Q&A. So someone asked, I have a background in graphic design and I aim to work as a creative director. How would this program prepare me for that? I'd say, and feel free to chip in, it's very, we have skills in leadership, in financial management, which are taught by various different people from different disciplines as well. So we have Nada Shepherd, who she is the CEO of a fashion company all about sustainable fashion. And if you're going to be a creative director, you need to have those business skills as well, and not just the creative side. So that's what I'd say to this. Also, if anyone's got any questions that I'm not answering fully, we do have a wonderful team of advisors, and they'll be more than happy to answer your questions by email or by phone or by Zoom. We're very accessible. And then
managing projects is also a course.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
For anybody who wants to be in a director role, there's an entire course that helps you learn processes and how to map out a project and bring it from conception to completion.
Fantastic. And we have one as well from Jacqueline. Are there opportunities for a co-op or an internship? It's not that it's something that we will organize for you, but some people have done internships as part of their, I think it's the graduating project that they do that.
Yep.
And we've also seen people do internships and then they've actually secured employment from that.
And we've been working a lot with career services within Yorkville to derive some interest from industry in offering more internships. So we do have people within the university who are trying to create more opportunities, and also they're helping to facilitate if you find your own and aren't sure what the next steps are, they can help you.
So I'm just going to repeat that for anyone who didn't hear that. We have a question about, for the faculty, which are the most fascinating ones?
Like of our courses? Our courses. In the course that we wrote together, it's obviously going to be the best and most exciting. I could plug one of the other new courses that I co-authored with our department chair, Sandy Carson, that's also starting next term, called Arts, Activism, and Social Engagement. So this is a course that was sort of Sandy's brainchild that he really wanted to launch, and then he invited me to co-author it with him, because these are issues that I'm also really interested in around how creatives can use their art practice in service of social justice. And so it's got a very art-focused approach, but also a very global approach. So it's not totally centered on North American issues. We've tried to really zoom out. So I'm super excited about that one. Do you have other favorites?
It's just really hard to say, right? Because people have different interests. So for some people, professionalizing what they do is really important to them because that's what they lack. And so those classes might be useful for them. For other people, like who, still have their fantastic idea, but they only have their idea, taking a class like research methods kind of forces you to understand the landscape that you're operating in. So I would say there's benefits to so many of the classes. I feel like there's more to say about that.
But I've even had somebody say that the financial literacy course was their absolute favorite course. So it would not be my favorite course. Clearly I need to take it, but right, to Carmen's point, everyone finds something that really grabs them and they get excited about.
And also the fact that this program is designed for creatives, and we know that creatives don't tend to like a lot of theory oftentimes. And one final question here as well.
Yeah, when you mentioned hybrid, is there a hybrid version of the course, or is it just all in person or all online?
I think you have a lot of choice. You're not stuck to just taking it online if you are in an online class, but if it's convenient for you.
We've also had people who they started in person, but then they've booked things. We had a guy who booked, I think it was a series out in Montreal. And so he then went online and did it there. We also have people who might want to do a mix of both because, they might have a job and either, they just want one day where they can come to campus and kind of focus there, and then the rest of the time it's online. But it is very flexible in that way. And it's designed to be so because the schedule of an artist is often not a fixed one. So there is that flexibility there. Absolutely. And it's there to support as well the creative endeavors you're doing. We had Cassie, she was a film production graduate from TFS. She started her own company before graduating. She used all the business plans. She talked about this in the open house we had recently. Used all the business plans from the program. And then she was supporting herself and her daughter fully financially before even graduating through her company. So it's very much something where it's not, okay, you need to take another year and a half, another 2 years out of your life to study. It's not that at all. This can actually support all the endeavors you're doing and get you into, where you want to go, or at least creative adjacent. So we've also had people who are working actors who, one of them, Gabby, now she manages the social media for a company. And so that's how she's, using her skills as well with things that she's picked up on the BCA. So
Yeah, I have students that are like music video directors and they're working now. And so, okay, they let us know I'm shooting something in Montreal, fine, right? I have another student who is involved in this, like another musician, he's an R&B musician, and he's involved in the Remix project, which is this huge thing. I think Drake made it or something. And is active in that. So like it's making music, but also like researching R&B at the same time, right? So it's like, it is a very flexible program.
absolutely. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Once again, any questions you have, please do get in touch. I think you'll all have my email from me contacting you with the details. So just reach out. You also might have some advice if you are interested in the program. And we hope, even if you don't join us on the BCA, that you've got something from today. If it's just, even inspiration for your creative ventures. Well, thank you so much to Carmen. Thank you so much, Kate. Thank you for everyone who made the trip in today. Thank you, everyone who came to see us online. So thank you very much both, and thank you everyone.
Thank you.
Do this again.